This podcast is part of the Planet Broadcasting Network.
Visit planetbroadcasting.com for more podcasts from our great mates.
Getting a Watchmen TV series. A sequel to not the movie, but the comic book.
Well, that's too confusing for me.
But it's also not a sequel to Before Watchmen, the comic book series.
Oh, you've actually cleared it up for me. Thank you. Appreciate
which is
it.
good or fine?
I remember it being fine.
Wow, imagine that. What a world.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's famously a comic book that was both considered impossible to follow up on and impossible to adapt.
Yes, right.
According to, creator Alan Moore.
Yeah, right.
And here we go. Zack Snyder's Watchmen. Again, famously, Alan Moore had his name taken off the credits.
Absolutely,
You'll
he
notice
did.
it's based on the graphic novel illustrated by Dave Gibbons. No mention of a writer anywhere.
No, that's it. I've actually got a short history of how this movie came to be.
Oh, I'm ready to hear about it.
First of all, if people could leave a like on this video, that'd be great. Leave a like. What do you got against it?
Yeah.
Do you like content? So do we. Leave a like. Hate myself. Anyway, Alan Moore...
Well, I like you. At least one person in the room does.
Alan Moore sold the rights to the Watchmen in the 80s. This and also V for Vendetta, which I'd love to cover at one point as well. Also, once you do that, maybe you shouldn't complain so much because you sold it, didn't you?
We should do a whole podcast episode on it. I think the whole situation's fascinating. We'll get to it one day. But yeah, the nuts and bolts is Alan Moore did sell the rights to Watchmen to DC.
Terry Gilliam in 1989 was trying to make it work, but he couldn't make it work. He suggested maybe a 5-hour miniseries at the cost of $1 million per page. That feels like something people could do now and are doing now, but in 1989,
That's insane.
It's not going to happen.
I remember when the Flash TV series was touted as being made for $1 million an episode, and people were like, "Oh my god,
will it be good?" And they went, "Ugh."
I mean, it might be, but also the star might become Dawson's dad in a future TV series.
So that's good too, isn't it? Yeah.
And then the Flash again multiple times in the future.
Well, that's true, yeah. Michael Bay considered jumping on board in 2003.
Okay.
Great. Hot off the back of The Island, no doubt. Or before that. It's not important.
Post Bad Boys, definitely.
I was sold to Paramount in 2004. Paul Greengrass considered doing a loose modern-day adaptation.
He's the Bourne Identity guy, right?
That's right. Just the first one, maybe? And Warner Brothers got it back. Darren Aronofsky wanted to do a modern-day update with the Vietnam War, changed to Iraq.
Side note, I was going to say Paul Greengrass's version. It's just the various characters in their civvies disappearing behind buses.
That's right.
There's nothing else.
There's nothing else, yeah. Can we make this 3 hours? Yeah. Or a mini-series. But no, Warner Brothers got it back. Darren Aronofsky wanted to make a modern-day update, which meant instead of Vietnam, it was Iraq because, politics.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's PC gone mad.
It's PC gone mad and ripped from the headlines.
That's true. Tim Burton was also interested with Johnny Depp being cast as the comedian, but he went on to make Sweeney Todd instead, which was... I saw some of it. I didn't like it. I did not like it. Yeah. Got any Sween heads out there? Is it a good one?
Sweenos, hit us up.
Yeah. But like you said, though, it was considered unadaptable. That being said, for a movie that's now 10 years old, it's a pretty fair shot. I think
so too, yeah. And I'm fairly regularly on Alan Moore's side with regards adaptations of his work. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is a great comic book series and is completely unadaptable to film, as was proven by the film adaptation of that.
Correct.
But I think this is a pretty solid swing at this movie. I mean, there are some tweaks.
It's not as good.
It's not as good.
Yeah.
That's true, yeah. It's visually very striking.
Yeah, I agree. And there's some of the visual stuff that I think is changed for the worse, which we'll get to. But like you said, generally, there's some good stuff in there.
And there's also some de-squidification, which a lot of people would believe is for the better.
Yeah, well, at the time I was like, I get it, but now I'm like, missed a trick there.
Bring the squid in.
Put that giant squid in. We'll get to it. Do you know the first image of this, though? There was a test shot, one frame of Rorschach, which was in the 300 trailer. That was the first we saw of that. Remember people used to do that?
I think maybe I heard about that, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember the time Mel Gibson added himself to the Apocalypto trailer?
I remember that. What an era.
He's all, and he's got a huge beard and like crazy hair, and it's like, well, that's actually quite terrifying.
That's our Mel.
I'm not going to see this movie now, and also because Mel Gibson directed it.
I mean, we mentioned the way it looks, and it does look pretty spectacular. The budget for this was $120 million. It's an R-rated comic book movie from 2009, so it only made $185. It did not make its money back. I think it's gone on to do okay since then, but it seems a strange movie to be like $120 million on this seems like a good idea for an R-rated comic book movie.
It's a DC property, but it isn't Batman.
Yeah.
It's, if anything, a lot of it is a parody of Batman. And I think a lot of that is reflected in the visuals. Like we've got, the second Night Owl looks an awful lot like, all the characters also kind of look like Joel Schumacher Batman characters.
The nipples on Ozymandias are an intentional throwback to Batman and Robin.
And I think the trailer has the Smashing Pumpkins song
the
that
same
wasn't.
song,
no,
yeah.
it's the opposite version. There's two versions of that song. That Smashing Pumpkins song.
Oh, right.
One
okay.
of the Batman
the beginning
movies,
is the end is the beginning
and
of
the end is the beginning is the end. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes
so
sense.
they had revert. There's a slow version and a fast version. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And if we're talking about Batman and Night Owl in particular, first of all, I love his ice costume that he wears.
Yes.
He's got a different snow costume. I love that.
That is so Batman in the 50s.
Absolutely it is. I also love that clearly Zack Snyder was like, I'm in love with goggles and everyone gets goggles. Because Justice League Batman, of course, famously gets a pair of
he's got
goggles
some
for
goggles.
no reason as well.
There is a reason he looks super cool with them on.
Oh, that's a really good point, actually, yeah. But apparently also Zack Snyder was like, do we have to make Night Owl like impotent and overweight? Apparently Patrick Wilson gained like 25 pounds for this role. But
Still looks pretty good.
He still looks great. That's kind of the point of the character.
Yeah.
But like, imagine this guy, he stopped being a superhero, but he was still cool and can get boners and had abs. Imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
And I think that is, is taken, and something that has been taken away from the comic book, and that is, a lot of people are critical of, and I cannot argue with that, is that they've gone, let's not make it real people who've decided to dress up in masks and fight crime. Let's make them superheroes, like in the traditional Batman kind of mold, where somebody can survive being punched through a wall.
Yeah,
or,
they're just knocking granite off the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which, look, I sort of, if you want to logic your way through it, I'd be like, well, if you fought crime, if you went outside and you punched people all night for years, there'd be very little left of you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
You'd have like artificial hips and replacement knuckles or
Yeah.
whatever. You probably could punch through a granite wall and not feel anything.
Yeah.
But I don't think that was Zack Snyder's intention. I think it
No.
was just like, oh my God, everybody in this universe can punch through a
Yeah,
wall.
because I think they're definitely heightened comic book characters in this.
Yeah.
They're that little bit more enhanced. I mean, I think a lot of the action in this is really good, like the alley fight, for example. But the prison riot in particular, where they just kind of stroll through and kind of clean up, all the prisoners in there. I think this is some of Zack Snyder's best action in moments in here. But it's definitely not like they don't feel like real people.
No,
a
for
lot of
sure,
this,
yeah.
The bad guy's clearly Ozymandias. They do
Well,
not. They do not bury that.
That was
lead at all.
my criticism at the time. It stands now, and I think that that's partially a function of Dave Gibbons' work. His illustration at the time.
Yeah.
Ozymandias' character is sort of portrayed as a kindly. He's a very beatific, nice man, and he sounds nice.
He's jovial and having a good time.
You can give him
about
whatever voice you want when you read the comic
Yes.
book, but in this one, I watched this with a friend of mine at the time in the cinema, and I think there was like a scene change. Ozymandias was in the scene,
Yeah.
and then it changed over, and in the transition, my friend leaned over and went, bum, bum, bum. Like, there was never any, even for the completely uninitiated to this movie, you're like, well, that's definitely the bad guy.
And you look at the build of the guy who kills the comedian.
Yeah.
It's clearly the same guy. There's actually a moment, it's at 3 minutes 43.
Oh, yes.
On one of the cuts. Whatever cut we watch, we'll talk about
If you
that.
go to 3:43 and it's not there, you're just in the wrong cut. So
That's right, exactly.
try a different cut.
You see his face.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, it's a stunt man,
Uh-huh.
which I guess kind of throws you off, but that
Yeah.
doesn't help either way. But
Yeah.
and even things like, actually, I do like this touch that when he's talking publicly and he's talking to the press, he uses an American accent, but because he has German origin, when he's private, he speaks with a slight German accent, and I like little tweaks like that.
What I think the issue was, Zack Snyder was like, well, if you make a movie with a superhero in it, you need a bad guy, and you need a bad guy quick.
Yeah.
Because Matthew Good, who plays Ozymandias, I've seen him in other things, and he's perfectly capable of portraying a very nice man.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he'd be capable of playing an evil man who's, appearing as a nice man, but they clearly gave him the direction. Be sinister.
Yeah.
Be weird and sinister in German.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So I like the opening credits of this where it gives you that alternate version of history, with Bob Dylan
That's
in the
great,
background.
yeah.
There's no ambiguity concerning did the comedian kill JFK.
He definitely did.
Well, it's
or he
hinted
was
at in
about, or maybe he was about to, and then somebody else did. And he's like, "Oh man,
Well, good ads, I guess.
I guess I could claim this or not claim it as required."
Well, in the comic, I believe, the original, it's hinted at.
Yes, it
but
is.
But then in Before Watchmen, he was the friend of JFK and
He's actually very
investigates it.
surprised. Yeah,
Yeah.
He's like, "What?
Yeah.
Never heard of such a thing."
There's also a moment in the introduction where...
I guess it depends on which one you would prefer.
Yeah, exactly.
Which one? How would you prefer JFK would die?
That's a very good question. I'd have to think about it, but gruesomely.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you could, yeah. Also in the intro, you see Night Owl stop a mugger out the front of a cinema, the original Night Owl, and that's supposed to be Bruce Wayne's parents.
Yes,
So they kind of divert that happening, which is interesting.
You also see, and this is, I wonder if this is just parallel thought or it's deliberate homage. In the comic book and in the movie, we see Dollar Bill, who is
Dollar Bills, y'all.
exactly. He's a Limp Bizkit album, and also he's the bank's mascot who decides to start fighting crime on his own.
Right.
And he is killed when his cape gets caught in a door.
Yes.
And then he's shot. And I'm wondering, in The Incredibles, which
It
came
must
out,
be, right? 2004? Yeah.
yeah, right. Because is that why Edna Mode is like no capes, because that gets you into trouble because of Watchmen the comic book back in the day? I wonder.
I think so. I think that's probably a callback, yeah. Jackie Earle Haley in this is terrifying and great.
Oh, for sure.
What a good version of Rorschach. Unbeatable. And I love that mask also. Well, not, but he gets beaten. He explodes, I believe, at the end.
You mean his acting's unbeatable?
Unbeatable, Mason. Not physically. He explodes. But I like the way they represented the mask. It's obviously CGI. You can actually buy masks that kind of do that similar thing now, where you breathe in them and they the pattern changes.
Couldn't have done it back in the 80s, though, could they?
Definitely not. But no, I think, and that definitely adds to, this is more comic book world than the original Watchmen, because the thing about the original Watchmen is the only otherworldly element is Dr. Manhattan. That's it.
Well, there's some hints. There's some hints. There's
Sure.
there's the idea that there might be some psychics out there, I think.
Okay, right.
But other than that,
Nothing
you're right.
overtly like...
No, nothing
yeah.
exactly, yeah. It's mostly normal people doing normal stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, when they say psychics, they also might mean people like laying out tarot cards
Yeah,
in a
right,
shopping
okay,
mall or
yeah.
something. It's never really...
Well, you say normal people doing normal stuff. How well do you think the bullet catch translates to live action?
Oh.
Because that's a big part of the comic where he
Yeah.
says that maybe I can catch a bullet.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he does. And his hand's kind of covered in blood. And it's implied sort of that, because he doesn't seem to be, his hand's not really padded in the comic at least.
Yeah, right.
He just hits it at a particular angle where he's able to kind of hold or kind of fall into it and catch
sort
it.
of a mind over matter situation.
Yeah.
And it seems it's like, it seems like very much in the comic book, like it's kind of down to the wire. Like he is amazed that that happened.
Yeah.
And in this, it's kind of just like, pting.
But yeah, well, that's true, yeah. It's got stuck in his leather glove, all right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm sold on the Dr. Manhattan effect. Like, it looks good.
Oh, yes.
But I think it's too glowy. And what they did, they put Billy Crudup in like a glowy suit so the light would reflect on everybody. And I think that works well to make him feel like he's really in the scene. But I
they
think
wrapped him in Christmas lights.
pretty much that's
Yeah.
essentially what they did. But I think could have maybe dulled it down a bit where he's just like blue with a slight, like a faint
Okay,
kind of.
alright.
Do you think is that just me maybe?
I don't think Zack Snyder's not into subtlety, all right?
Yeah, that's true. What I did think was interesting about that character, though, is his backstory is told really well, for one. But also, they kept his human voice. And the reason they did that was because he wanted to relate more to humanity. And you see that, and that's a big part of the comic as well. Where,
Probably could have not been blue then.
yeah, and also...
Because he can not be blue if he
That's
doesn't
true.
want to.
And also put your dong away, mate,
yeah,
obviously.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but that was an element of, well, he can speak however he wants, but, you know,
right,
but I'm going to use my regular human voice.
No, I will not put my dong away in this supermarket.
Do you want to talk about the squid?
Yes, of course I do.
Do you want to explain the comic book ending?
So in the comic book, spoilers for Watchmen,
Yes.
Ozymandias' plan is to unite the Soviet Union and the United States by suggesting to them that there is a alien threat somewhere out in space, and they've
Or
sent
another dimension?
Yeah,
or-
another dimension, and they've sent some sort of scout or some sort of probe onto our planet, and that probe is a giant squid monster,
Yes.
a giant alien squid monster, which Ozymandias has built in a lab and then killed everybody involved with the creation of it. So he's the
Yeah.
only one who knows that he's truly behind it. But in the movie, he's like, I'm just going to blow up New York and say Dr. Manhattan.
It's like
did it."
New York and London and
Yeah,
probably
right.
Sydney, I
Yeah,
assume.
absolutely. Did you
why
see
not?
anyone cheering in front of the Opera House?
Yeah. They
That
did
was
the greatest hits of destructing cities around the
Yes.
world. Yeah, I can see why they did it, because I think it still works,
Yeah.
I feel, but I think it's weird that they went, well, that otherworldly element we're not going to incorporate, but we'll do the bullet catch and the moving mask and the big glowing man or whatever,
right,
but we're taking the squid out, yeah.
I think if Zack Snyder had his way, he would have changed a lot of... I think if Zack Snyder had his way, he would have changed a lot more than just the squid.
You're probably right,
I think,
yeah.
and I think maybe that's why this movie, to me at least, is one of his strongest offerings. It's because he couldn't have changed much without the entire House of Cards kind of collapsing.
I'm surprised how faithful it is. I think, though, coming off the back of 300, he would have been like, and the studio would have been like, well, that works. If you just take the core elements of that and adapt it exactly, then you're going to be primo goodo, slow-mo speed up.
Yes,
Make that happen if you could. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got some notes here on the original draft from 1989 by Sam Hamm.
I know Sam Hamm.
You know Sam
Not
Hamm?
personally, but I think he did a lot of novelizations of movies back in the day. I think he did
very
the
good.
Batman 1989
Well,
novelization.
I hope he did, because
Me
if not,
too.
you're going to look like a right fool.
I know.
So this is a vastly different version than what we got in the final film. It's 20 years prior. But Veight's plan to change the world was to travel back in time and assassinate John Osterman via sniper rifle before he becomes Dr. Manhattan.
Okay.
But Dr. Manhattan subsequently kills Veidt instead of letting him live. Another change is Dr. Manhattan subsequently kills Veidt instead of letting him live. So at the end he's like, did I do the right thing? And he's like, I don't know, man. Then this is like, you've been exploded by me.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is signifying my disapproval of what you've done. I've blown you up.
Additionally, in the ending, Dr. Manhattan destroys himself in the past before John is transformed into Dr. Manhattan, causing a rift in space and time. You'll love this. Then Laurie, Dan, and Rorschach are sucked into an alternate dimension and discover a world where they are characters in a hit comic book serial and decide to pick up crime fighting again.
Oh, yeah. Now they are so meta. And they'd have their own crime fighting serial, too.
Definitely they
Watchmenos. Side note, Sam Hamm co-wrote the screenplay for Tim Burton's Batman and the story for Batman Returns.
There you go.
But not the novel.
Not very good
Who did the novel?
Who did do the novel?
Don't know.
I bet it was bloody...
Alan Dean Foster?
Yeah, I was going to say it's
Probably
Alan Dean Foster.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In a different draft, though, by David Hayter, Dan and Laurie still spend the night at Karnak after Veidt assassinates the leaders of almost every country. However, Laurie wakes up later and then gets seriously drunk on champagne, possibly because of the loss of John and Rorschach. She then discovers that Dan is fighting with Veidt, which ends with Dan killing Veidt with a boomerang. So that's a good version too, isn't it?
And then we'd absolutely have some cheering in front of the Sydney Opera House, wouldn't we? He's bloody got him,
He's
hasn't
got
he?
it, mate. So there are multiple releases of this. Which one do you watch? Do you watch the cinema release? Do you watch the director's cut? Do you watch the ultimate cut, which is the one with the Black Freighter animation with Jerry Butler put into it?
Well, obviously you watch the one with Jerry Butler.
Well, apparently Zack Snyder's like, don't watch the Jerry Butler one because we couldn't really find a way to make it work. So we made it, but
It doesn't
it's
work.
just on the DVD
Okay.
separately. Yeah.
But also, do you trust Zack Snyder's opinion?
I mean, it's his version.
I guess so, that's
sure,
true.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I watched it independently, and it definitely works as a standalone thing. I think when you weave it in and out of the graphic novel,
Yeah.
it definitely would flow better than animation.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Yeah,
if you
exactly.
didn't know what was going on, it'd be like, what is this?
Exactly, and especially from that kind of hyper-real, like color-soaked reality to sort of flat comic book animation, that is quite jarring.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah. I got a couple bits of trivia to wrap things up, if
ready.
you don't mind, Mason.
Please do.
Okay, so we talked about Alan Moore. He was like, I hate people making things that I made, making different things.
Yeah, only I can take things that were created by other people and adapt them into other works. Only I can do that. I'm a wizard and I live in a cave. But carry on.
Zack Snyder was quoted as saying, worst case scenario, Alan puts on his DVD player on a cold Sunday in London and watches and says, yeah, that doesn't suck too bad. Alan Moore commented back saying, though, that's worst case scenario. I think he underestimates what the worst case scenario would be. That's never going to happen in my DVD player. I'm never going to watch this fucking thing. So there you
Also,
go.
he doesn't own a DVD player. He owns like some sort of magic lantern situation. you
And
know?
a wicker basket filled with different herbs.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. But reportedly, though, on another occasion, a better-tempered Moore said, that's probably a good movie in its own right, but he's indifferent to movies based on his own work. And if you thought that bit of trivia was amazing, how about this?
Is this one more or less amazing?
It's more amazing. I
Oh,
feel.
wow.
This is from IMDb. Snoop Dogg admitted on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, episode 4.9 in 2009, that he fell asleep during this movie. Can you imagine?
I can't imagine, but also what context? Was it in the cinema? Was it on a plane? Was it while recording a rap video?
These are
Who
all good
knows?
questions.
Isn't it though?
Tweet at Snoop Dogg. At what
you
point
could.
did he fall asleep? But yeah, that's been The Watchmen 2009. I think it's got merit.
I think so too.
Yeah. And you definitely have to separate it from the comic book material, because if you kind of compare them too closely, it's not as good, is it?
No.
Yeah.
Take some time. Don't shotgun the graphic novel and then go straight to the movie.
We haven't seen any of the new show as of yet, but I feel like setting that decades after the graphic novel is a good way to continue the series instead of trying to adapt it again.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Then again, it might be bad regardless. We just don't know.
We just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the dam is broken on successors to Watchmen.
And you can never put a fish back in a dam, as the saying goes.
Yep. Is that what happens at the end of Doomsday Clock?
Yeah, man. You couldn't get that fish back in the dam.
My goodness.
Yeah. Anyway, this has been Caravan of Garbage, but we also have a show called The Weekly Planet, a podcast where we talk movies and comics and TV shows that comes out every Monday morning. You want to come along? You can. It's free. Check it out if you want. You don't
Join
have to.
the party. That's
Join
what we
the
say.
party. That's what we always say.
There's no party.
There's never been one and there never will be. But also, if you want to... But also, if you want us to look at something else for Caravan of Garbage, you got a suggestion, we'll look at it. I got some Alan Moore stuff here that we could look at.
I'm
what about
excited
this?
to hear about it.
V for Vendetta.
Yep.
From Hell. LXG.
LXG. There we go.
Constantine. That
It's
movie
pretty
is
good.
a lot of that's
It's
based
good,
on his
solid.
work.
Yep.
The Killing Joke, the animated one,
Oh, all right.
where Batman has sex with Batwoman. It's weird. It's a weird movie.
I reckon LXG.
Give us a suggestion, but we'll
Please
probably
do.
just do LXG, all right?
Yeah, that's right. We've got our heart set on it.
We're doing it. Anyway, I'm at Mr. Sunday Movies on Twitter.
I'm at Wikipedia Brown on Twitter.
Have a good time, everybody.
Grab it at Jimmy, guys. We'll see you next week. Also, it's Batgirl. You're going to get letters.
I want the letters. I welcome them. Look, who made the bigger mistake in that scenario? Me saying Batgirl instead of Batwoman, or the people who wrote that into that movie?
Good question. Or Batgirl boned and Batman. I mean, guy's got issues.
It
Got
certainly
problems,
does,
you know?
yeah. This podcast is part of the Planet Broadcasting Network.
Visit planetbroadcasting.com for more podcasts from our great mates.
I mean, if you want. It's up to you.